welcome back to Furious Driving. I hope you guys are all well. Personally, I'm starting to get a bit fed up of being stuck indoors, and the whole stuff not turning up on time to carry on with projects is starting to get me down a bit, because I obviously can't go to work, so all I've got to do really is the cars in the driveway, the projects. And I've started quite well this week with a bit of a big effort on one of the cars, but then I couldn't carry on because I was waiting for parts, so I was going to move on to another car, but the parts aren't here yet, so wanted to move to a third car, but again, no parts. The only thing I've got here to do is these engine mounts for the Rover 2000, so I need to go around to the lockup and do that at some point, put these on, which will be a nice video for you guys at some point. But yeah, this week I'm just not really feeling it anymore. Just a bit fed up really. But good news, something did turn up in the post today, my new Rover Tomcat t-shirt. I've added these and side views and Volvo side views onto the Redbubble store, and this is the first one that I've actually ordered that has turned up, and I really like this. This put a smile on my face when it arrived in the post earlier, so reasons to be cheerful, 1. Okay, we'll come back to that later. But something I've been planning to do for a while, because it's actually taken a really long time to work out, is I thought I would do it the other day when I did one of the other videos. I talked through every car I've ever owned, and it took me a while to work out how many cars I'd ever owned. It's that many. And then I went to go look for photos of them, because I thought, what's the point of doing it without pictures? And I've done a lot of picture research as part of my actual job, so I know how long picture research takes. But even by my own expectations, it took a long time, because a lot of these going back to like the early 90s, and so I've been going through roll after roll of old film, old bonus print envelopes, looking for photos, and I found a lot of them. I'll be honest, I didn't find all of them, but I did quite well. So hopefully this will prove entertaining and be my life in cars. And I've thrown in a few extras as well, because I've known my wife for her entire driving career, and I've maybe influenced some of her buying decisions quite heavily. So I'm going to claim them as my own, because I got to drive them and I kind of half chose them with her, guided her choices, you might say. Right, let's begin at the beginning. Back in the early 90s, I'm not including years, not for like GDPR security, just because a lot of them it's a bit hazy as to when the cars changed over, and I don't have the documents to try and work it all out anymore. But my first ever car, bought with the proceeds of a summer of fruit picking, because we're in the southeast and there's lots of farms around here, at least there are until the developers try and build over them, which they're doing quite rapidly at the moment. A 1979 Mach II Ford Escort L, beige with a brown vinyl roof, a picture of brown with a brown interior as well, I think I remember. 325 quid, really nice car, virtually rot free, just a little bit of body rot around the arches because it was an old Escort at that point. If I still had that car now, I could probably pay the mortgage off, but I haven't. Bought it when I was 16, passed my tests not long after I was 17, kept it for a little bit after that until the Rover 2000. I can only find one photo of the Escort because I didn't really keep it that long. I did a lot of photography for a hobby back then, and it was mostly black and white, but I didn't really seem to take many photos of that car for some reason. I don't know. Maybe I just didn't love it enough. I should do, it's my first car. But anyway, Rover 2000 came along shortly afterwards, and I absolutely adored the Rover 2000, and that's why I've still got it nearly 30 years later. That car was 500 quid. It was a solid car, but someone had rattle can painted it, so it didn't look very good. And the red little vinyl leather interior was a bit cracked in places, and it was kind of sunburnt and sun bleached in the back. And it was a long time until I actually had the interior redone. But I kept that one all the way through college, all the way through uni. Used to sort of do massive mileages in it, and I should have sold it when I started my first job, when I needed to be driving every day for work, and I needed like a regular and fairly discreet, unobtrusive car. And I bought a Mach III Escort, which is horrible, but I didn't sell the Rover. That one stayed because I really liked that thing. It had been my favourite car for so long by that point, well, a few years anyway. But I didn't want to part with it, so I parked up at my parents' house, lived in the corner of a drive while I went to work in an utterly disgusting bright orange Mach III Escort. It was an A plate, I think there's a 1.3 as well. It was so crude and basic you couldn't believe it. Still had a carburettor which was full of grit, and sometimes you'd have to pull over at the side of the motorway and just shake the car to kind of free the float bowl and just get the fuel running again. It was orange, which is kind of cool looking back, but at the time wasn't quite as discreet as maybe my bosses would have liked. You had to drive down the motorway one-handed because the sunroof would fly open anything above 50 miles an hour, so it made for really safe motorway travel. But I was very glad to see the back of that one. No photos exist of that car. Oh, I forgot to mention, because I was in the car so much, I bought one of those little plug-in kettles so you can make a cup of tea when you're on the road. Unfortunately, the first time I plugged that in, it blew most of the fuses in the car and melted some of the circuits, so I no longer had hazard lights or interior lights or a power socket in the car anymore. So it became even more crude and unpleasant to be in. I replaced it with another Escort. It was a C-plate in this kind of purple colour. I think was exclusive to the laser range. It was quite luxurious compared to the old utter basic poverty horror spec previously. So yeah, I was very pleased to see the back of that car. Replaced it with another Escort. This was a Sea-Ridge Mark III, and I believe it was a laser. It was purple, it had special wheel trims because it was a laser, and it was relatively comfortable compared to the other one. It had kind of tweedy fabric seats, which were kind of sort of posh. It had a wind-up proper sunroof, like a tilt and retract sunroof rather than just a poppy-uppy aftermarket horrible thing. It didn't have electric windows, but it all worked and it was quite a nice car to be in. I kept that one for a little while, but I wanted something a little bit more comfy and a little bit more nicer than that. So I replaced it with another Escort. A Mark IV this time, my first Mark IV Escort. In fact, my only Mark IV Escort looking back, and this was a gear. Only a 1.4, I should have gone for the 1.6, but this one turned up on a used car lot very close to home, and it was a lovely colour, kind of a metallic-y grey graphite colour. Nice velour interior. It had the little kind of four-way joystick speaker thing, which every Ford had back in the mid-90s or 80s. And yeah, electric windows, a pop-up retractable sunroof. This was quite a nice car, and I kept it a little while, not that long, maybe a year or so, because one thing I'd found when I had the horrible orange Escort is a love for Alfa Romeos. Purely by chance, there was a 33, a red Mark II or Series 2 33 for sale. I had a for sale sign in the window, and I spoke to the neighbour about it, and he took me out for a drive. I didn't get to drive it because I was too young to be insured on it, but he took me out for a ride and I was just smitten. That was the moment I fell in love with Alfa Romeos. A red 33 just absolutely clicked for me. Unfortunately, I rung around, no one would insure me on it. I was too young, so the car sold. I didn't see it again. But while I had that grey Escort, the Mark IV, I found I was able to get insured in an Alfa. So I went hunting for a 33, and I found what I really wanted was a Series 3. I wanted the 4x4, the Q4 33, but I think there was maybe one in the UK back then. There's probably minus figures now. It's not a common car. Ideally, what I really wanted was the Q4 station wagon 33. Yeah, but finding one of those in the UK before the internet was not going to happen. So when I found, I think it was £1,700 for a 33 Cloverleaf, which is the one you really want to get, obviously, Series 2 in black. Oh, I was going to buy it, regardless how the test drive went. I was going to buy that car. Alarm bells should have rung when I saw that the centre console was cracked, where someone had stolen the radio out of it, and the guy struggled to unlock it. But I paid because the engine was beautiful. It was the Boxer engine, the 1.7 Boxer. Well, that was part of the thing. I really wanted to have a Boxer engined Alfa while it was still a current car, because I was kind of aware that the T-Spark had replaced it. But I got my experience of a Boxer, and that was a fantastic, magical experience. It revved like a motorbike. It was just so fast to get up into the red line. Unfortunately, it was so fast to brake in every way you can possibly imagine, though, that it's the only Alfa I've ever had that lived up to the reputation of Alfas. Or you're driving along the road, the tail lights would sometimes come on or go off or just not work. The boot tailgate would unlatch when you were driving, which is always fun. It would drop the driver's door window into the door, just fall when you were driving or when you tried to push the button to make it move, and then it would just tangle itself. So I replaced the door or the window sort of 3, 4, 5 times. That got old in a hurry. And the kind of clincher that I thought, I have got to get rid of this car, was when it started, it got a fault where something warmed up and expanded and then broke a connection. So it wouldn't restart after it was warm. So you had to park up and be aware you were parked for a good half hour every time you turn the engine off. Someone else parked exchanging it and looking at other cars. I had to take a really slow walk around the used dealer's yard to make sure that the car had cooled down enough for them to take it for an appraisal run when I got rid of it. I thought maybe I could go with it a bit longer, but the clincher was one day the heater matrix in the cabin just dropped all its water on my feet one night, and that was it. And I just chocked the window shut with a bit of wood, mopped out the carpet, drove around to a used car supermarket, And I thought, what can I get? What's not going to break the bank? I'll drive home in anything. And they had a 216 Rover Bubble, which is the follow-on from the R8, but it was kind of a development of the R8, which I've now got the coupe of. It looked very, very exciting and modern and new and quite fresh at the time, especially in Night Fire Red in SI spec. It's only got hubcaps, but it looked a little bit good. And yeah, the interior on that thing was lovely. That kind of nice kind of leafy pattern in the velour seats is beautiful. It got the electric sunroof, electric windows. NREG, so that's what, 1995 car, and it was a couple of years old at this point, so I think it was just slightly too old to be getting in air conditioning as standard on a car like that. But I loved that car. That was really nice. It was so comfortable. It handled really well. I was just amazed at how Rovers, which just weren't really particularly rated even then, was just such a good car. I changed the wheels on it from LG 056 alloys, which looked quite cool. I meant to lower it, but I never quite got around to it. Uprated the stereo and did a subwoofer and that kind of stuff because I was young and foolish, and actually it sounded quite good with a subwoofer. I think I might still have that around somewhere, but I cut it out of hundreds of bits of MDF to shape it into the weird side shape of the boot, so it didn't take up too much space and I could still have a practical hatchback. It was a practical hatchback. It was a 3-door though, which looked so good. 3-door hatchbacks, just what's happened to all of those? Manufacturers don't do them anymore. But I liked that car. I really, really liked that car. It wasn't my true love because I really wanted a 145 Alpha, and I've been after a 145 for so long. Even when I bought the Rover, that was what I really wanted. But you know, I just knew there were too much money and too much insurance. But one day I was driving home past a Fiat Alpha garage, and I was pulled up at the traffic lights, and as I was sat at the traffic lights in the Rover 216, I just glanced over to my left, and there, staring at me, was a bright red 146 Ti. A P plate, so it was a year newer, and immaculate Rosso red. What a beautiful car. What an absolutely stunning vehicle. It wasn't any kind of a thought process. It was just instantly turn left over the curb into the garage. I'm buying that now. Thanks guys. It wasn't a problem and I loved it. It's another car which I've not had many cars I've been disappointed with, but that wasn't one of them. The only problem I had with that car, it didn't rust, it was galvanised, it had no electrical faults, the engine was fantastic, it was a 2-litre T-Spark, so obviously had to be on top of the oil all the time. I did have an aftermarket immobiliser put onto it. Like with the 33, the insurance insisted on a Thatcham Cat 1 immobiliser, so they wouldn't insure it without that anti-theft thing on it. And after a little while, that started playing up, and that did cause problems with it not wanting to start, and it was diagnosed as the immobiliser. But yeah, that was a great car, and I would have kept it a lot longer. Unfortunately, one day I was driving to work, and I used to work in London, and there's a tunnel called the Limehouse Link, which used to be quite a fast tunnel. It's a 30-mile-an-hour limit thing now, but it was absolutely hammering with rain that day. And as we came out of the tunnel, from the dry tunnel into the heavy rain, lots of standing water, a few cars up ahead, and bear in mind this is a dual carriageway but with side turnings, someone about 3 or 4 cars up ahead decided to make a right turn, stood on the brakes and just stopped. The car in front of me stopped. I had left a big gap because there was a big 38-ton tipper truck behind me. I stopped gently, and in the mirror I could see this big shape getting closer and closer and closer, and it got so close it hit, and I just got picked up, taken with the truck, and it eventually pushed me to where the car in front had been, but it moved off with like a second to spare, and I kind of moved into the space as it moved away. Yeah, the Alpha sadly was a write-off, and I was very, very sad about that. Not least because I put 4 brand new Pirellis on it the day before, and I just had the variable valve timing fixed as well, which cost several £100. So I was very sad for multiple reasons on that. But I've been looking at the brand new Mini, and I really wanted a red Mini Cooper with a white roof and white wheels. Does that sound familiar? I'd seen it at the motor show in, must have been, was it in London or was it in Birmingham in that year? I can't remember, but I'd seen it at the motor show. They'd had all the cars upstairs, so you couldn't actually see them. There was like a downstairs display saying "We are Mini," but the cars were upstairs, and they only let a few people up at a time. And because I had an Alfa Romeo key, they let me go up and look at their Minis, so they thought we're clearly a prospect, we can steal some Alfa Romeo custom. And I was pretty much dead set that my next car after the Alfa was going to be a Mini Cooper. But after being hit by a massive truck, I kind of went the other way from small cars, thinking I want something sizable, I want a big car that's got lots of steel around me. And I went looking around, and I found a pre-registered Freelander. If you're not sure what pre-registered is, it's where car dealers have to get a certain number of registrations every month, and if they're falling a bit behind or if they want to boost their numbers, they will just register some cars to people who work there and then sell them on as used stock straight away. So you get a car that's brand new, maybe just sort of been driven down the road and back, but for the price of a used car. And this Freelander was brand new. It's a GS with the Vortex alloys, the roof bars. It looked great. Yeah, so I didn't pay an awful lot of money for that car. Bear in mind it was a brand new car, but used car money. That was a good car. That was lots of fun. People slate them because they are based on a Marina platform and they've got Marina door handles and Rover K-Series engine, which, in fairness, it only ever failed one head gasket. Admittedly, the week it snowed and I was given a Mondeo courtesy car, but it only ever failed one head gasket, but that was maybe my fault because I put an induction kit air filter on it. Could be my fault. I don't know. I'm not taking full responsibility for it, but I like that car. But after 3 years, the warranty was about to run out, and towards the last month or two, the gearbox had started playing up. That's that same old Rover rubbish gearbox thing, in that it was really, really hard to select sometimes. Obviously, it became all the time in the end. If you're trying to change down as you come to a halt in traffic, it wouldn't let you go fourth to first. You had to go third, second, first, every single time, and the clutch was really naggy. I took it back under warranty 3 or 4 times, and they looked at it and they fiddled with it, and they just didn't seem to be able to do anything with it. So as soon as the warranty was up, that was it for the Freelander. It had to go. Now I'll pause and backtrack a little bit here because I missed out a couple of cars. Careless. Going back to, around the same time I had the Mach 3 Escorts. My wife got her first car, an A-Reg Polo Mark II bread van. That was not the height of sophistication, but it is quite a cool thing. I mean, looking back as a retro classic, that's really, really nice. And she really liked it at first. It was her first car, but she fell out of it pretty quickly. The first time she drove it on her own, she cut her hand on the boot. There's one main fuse on those apparently, and when that goes, the entire car dies. And that happened to us one night driving down a busy road in the dark. The lights went, the engine died. I would say the brakes failed, but the brakes were already terrible. When they moved the car from left-hand drive to right-hand drive, they didn't bother taking the servo, so you didn't have assisted brakes on it. So that was pretty heavy, and it was quite a heavy thing to drive. Even though it's only little, it had quite wide wheels on it as well, so the steering unassisted was very heavy indeed. That didn't really last that long, and the same place that we found the Rover 216 is also where we found her first modern car, if you like, and Punto 55 SX, black with 5 doors. I couldn't find any photos of this car, which really surprised me because we used that car so much. Back then we used to do a lot of sort of camping for the weekend type holidays, and so the cars got used for that kind of thing, and there were always photos with horses sniffing the car, tents in the background, campfires, that kind of stuff. I couldn't find any photos of that car. I have no idea why. That car, even though it was utterly basic, no aircon, manual windows, no sunroof, the Punto was a massive step up. It felt so modern. The Polo felt like something of the 1940s compared to the Punto, which felt like something from the future, even in the most basic form. And I think that was only a 1.1 litre as well, that little 55. That was a nice car, and we're kind of sorry to see that go, but that was replaced with another Punto. But this time, this was the good one. This is about the best Punto they made. Again, from the same car supermarket. We spent our weekends walking around there, I think. This was a Punto 90 Elx Convertible, silver with a blue hood. The smallest car ever fitted with a power hood at the time. I don't think anyone's made a smaller car with a power hood since that I'm aware of. And that was really nice. That was electric everything, still no aircon, but power steering, power brakes, power windows. That was such a nice car. It came with a slightly odd number plate, P18ABE. We think it was because of the supermarket it came from. Most of the cars were ex-fleet cars. We think maybe it was some boss's favourite secretary's sort of gift of a company car or something, because P18ABE spells P1 Babe when you split it out on the number plate. Fortunately, they had that on retainer and didn't want it because my wife really didn't want that on her car. So she's quite happy to have a normal P-Reg number plate put on that instead. Being a 90 ELX, it was the 1.6 litre, so it's based on the Sporting, so the lower suspension, the body kit, all that kind of stuff. But whenever you went to a garage, whenever she took it to a garage, she was massively condescended by mechanics back then. She would book it in and they'd say, what's the engine size? Booking it in for a service or an MOT. And she'd say 1.6. And they'd say, oh no dear, no love, it's not. Look at the back of the car, there's the numbers written next to the name. Tell us what that is. It's a 1.6. And it was a 1.6, but they were expecting a 1.1 or a 1.3. And they couldn't believe it, the 1.6. And that thing shifted. That was a great car. In the end, we got rid of that only because it's starting to feel a bit worn out. It needed all new front suspension bushes, front steering bushes. It was suddenly going to cost a lot just to sort of keep it going on the road. And at the time, it was just a used car. And I'd happened to have seen a Fiat Barchetta for sale in another garage. And it was a garage, there's a Fiat Alfa Romeo garage in, can I say their name? I don't know, this isn't the BBC. They're in West Kent, they're in Tunbridge Wells, they're a main dealer. They're terrible. Yeah, it's Thames Alpha Fiat in Tunbridge Wells. They're the worst garage I've ever been to. Never buy a car from them, never have our car serviced by them. They are the absolute worst. I hate them. Right, I would never buy a car from them normally. I knew they had a bad reputation. But this car was on the forecourt, and you never see Fiat Barchettas on the forecourt, not sitting there new with a Fiat warranty. So we traded the Punto convertible for this Barchetta, and it was lovely. There is a photo of this one. Not many for some reason. I know the reason, because Thames couldn't fix it. People get all kind of funny about driving on the wrong-handed car. It's really not an issue. The only thing with that, the roof being up, sometimes made certain junctions a bit hard to see out of. But it wasn't really an issue. That car was just too pretty to care, and most of the time the roof was down anyway, so it didn't make a difference. It's Punto mechanical, so it's cheap and easy to service, but it is a hand-built body, so if you do damage it physically, that can be an issue. But we didn't do that. We didn't damage it physically. It came with a leak. Every time it rained, it filled with water, which is in England quite an issue. So when the car was a month or two old, we took it back to the main dealer, Thames, Tunbridge Wells, talking to you, and they had it for a week or two trying to figure out what the problem was. They couldn't do it, so we drove it around for a week or two, rained some more, car filled up, car went back to the garage, sat with them for a couple of weeks, driving around, paying for a lovely nice Barchetta she was, but no, driving around in a basic Punto hire car, so she was getting a bit miffed at this. And it went back and forth and back and forth, and they kept saying, yes, we can definitely fix it. Then we'd leave it with them for a week, 2 weeks, even a month at one time. On one occasion, they'd had it for a couple of weeks, and I rang them up and said, it's been raining really hard all week. The car is indoors, isn't it? Because, you know, it leaks, and that's why you've got it. And they said, yes, sir, absolutely. It's in undercover, no problem. And so I drove past 10 minutes later, found the car covered in cobwebs, sitting in the back of the outside lot, filled with water. So I was not massively pleased with Thames Tunbridge Wells. Have I said their name enough yet? No, I haven't. I hate those people. After 6 months of owning the car, they'd had it for a solid 3 months. I was really, really annoyed. They wouldn't return phone calls. I went in there in person one time. I was in a waiting area. There were 4 other people. They were all there to complain as well. So that's not a great sign of a dealer's commitment to its customers. Fortunately, in the intervening time, I had decided to get rid of the shonky gearboxed Freelander. As much as I liked that car, Freelanders are very endearing. You know, I don't like SUVs. I'm on record as saying this many times. SUVs and automatics are things I don't need in my life for the most part, but there are 2 or 3 4x4s which I've kind of got a blind spot to. The Freelander is just interesting enough to make it through, and I quite like them. I might even get another one of them one day because they're quite fun. Anyway, I didn't want to sort the gearbox out of warranty. I'd wanted an Alfa 156 ever since they came out. I mean, come on, they are one of the prettiest cars you've ever seen, aren't they? And the perfect 3-box saloon shape, those headlights, the way the doors kind of just curve around. In the sportier trims, when you got the sills on them, those teledial wheels, there's everything about the 156. The seats, the dashboard, everything is just beautiful. I've never seen a better looking saloon than that. And so I'd wanted one since they came out. Anyway, as they were finally going out of production, I got an email or a letter, probably a letter being back then, from Alfa UK saying, you've previously expressed interest in our cars. I didn't know I had, but clearly I must have done. We've now got a limited supply of the last of the 156s in the UK. If you'd like one, go and talk to your local main dealer. So I did. I drove up there in my Freelander, forcing it through the gears, trying to make it get there, and it made it there. And I said, what I really want is a black 156 with a red leather interior, please. And I had a look around. They didn't have any black ones, but they did have one in Lipari grey, which is a very dark metallic with the red leather interior. What a pretty combination. And I got that car brand new for more than a third off. And wow, was I happy with that choice. That was the right decision to make. With the 2.4 litre diesel, that car was rapid. It's 175 horsepower standard. I forget the torque, but it's a lot. Nice 6-speed manual gearbox in it. The seats are the comfiest of any car I've ever sat in. And back then I was doing insane mileages. I mean, one week I drove from Kent to Cornwall to Kent each night, then up to Hull, then down to Devon, then to Yorkshire, then back to Cornwall again, and then somewhere else on the East Coast in a week. And I didn't have a bad back, I didn't feel tired, I felt relaxed getting out of that car every time. It got incredible economy, it was rapid, I mean, it was really rapid. especially after I remapped it and the thing got 200 horsepower. It was seriously quick car. Lots of fun and beautiful, and I kept that car for 5 years and did 150,000 miles in it, and that was a great car. I only got rid of it because I wanted a 159, and that's what I'm coming to next. But I had needed the deposit money for the 159, so I had to get rid of the 156. No, I wouldn't have changed it for any other car apart from this particular 159. And a few months later, about 6 months later, a friend of mine just called me out of the blue and said, "What was your old number plate?" So I told him the 156's number plate, and he'd been a passenger in that car for literally thousands of miles, so he knew what the car was like. He knew how I'd cared for it, serviced it on the button every time, in fact more than necessary to service it, so he knew it was a good car. So I've just found this car, it's up north somewhere, and it's like 1,500 quid. Do you think I should buy it? It's like, yes I do. So my friend bought it. The car was sold up into Stoke-on-Trent, and then lived there for a couple of months, and then came back down to the southeast again, where it lived for a short time. When he sold it, he did offer it to me, but I didn't have any spare cash or space, typically as usual, and so I had to let it go. And now the car doesn't appear to be on the DVLA database, so I can only assume its beautiful red seats are now a sofa in someone's office, and the rest of the car has gone to the scrapyard in the sky. While I was using that car, it had a 12,000 mile service interval, so I was going there 2 or 3 times a year for service. Plus, because of the weight of the diesel engine, I was getting through the front wishbones about once a year as well. It just wear the bushes out on it. Occasionally doing jobs on airfields and racetracks, so an impromptu track day while I was at work, which is always quite fun. But I was back at the dealer at least 5 times a year, getting just service things sorted on it. And then they took on a Fiat franchise as well, and we started this Barchetta, which was just raining inside the car all the time. And so we said, "Can you take on this problem child car?" And they said, "Yeah, bring it up, we'll have a look." We left it with them on the Monday, got a phone call on the Tuesday, which is pretty rapid turnaround considering it'd been weeks apart from communication at the previous garage. They said, "Yeah, we've found the problem, we need to get a part in from Italy, so it's going to be a bit of a delay getting the car back to you." And I thought, oh God, here we go again. How many weeks are we talking? Oh, Thursday? Oh, a 2-day delay. Sorry, I misunderstood. I thought you meant a month. No, 2 days. And they came back after 2 days. They replaced the front top seal of the convertible roof. The car never leaked again. Why couldn't Thames have done that in 2 days instead of faffing for, well, 3 months out of the 6 months they first had it for? Useless garage. Very sadly indeed, that brilliant garage lost its franchise a bit later on. They closed down. Thames are still going. God knows how. They're terrible. After a little while, we decided that the electrics in the Barchetta may well turn out to be quite suspect, having been drenched quite so much, and there's a good chance that it may rust quite badly because it had been underwater quite so much. So when we got a dog and we needed a hatchback, the Barchetta had to go, and that was replaced with an Alfa 147, which is my wife's car then. So we had the 156 in the drive and the 147 in the drive. That was a nice combination of cars to have. And in fact, the 147 is virtually the same colour as the 145 I have now, just a slightly darker shade of that blue. That was a Lusso with a 2-litre twin spark, which that was a nice car, rapid engine, beautiful crisp note, those beautiful leather seats, virtually the same leather seats as in the 156, so you get in one or the other and it's always a comfortable drive. The only problem was, apart from the fact you had to keep on tipping the oil up in the 147, the 147 had a 5-speed gearbox and the 156 had a 6-speed gearbox, so if you're heading on the motorway and accelerating up through the gears in the 147, sometimes I might just go to 5th, hit sort of 70 miles an hour, pull it into what I'm expecting to be 6th, and hear the surprising grinding noise as it's trying not to go into reverse at 70. So yeah, my bad. But yeah, we kept that car a while. That was a good car. I think she kept that in 9 years in total. She's not a car collector, flipper, get through cars in a hurry like me. She has a car and hangs on to it. So yeah, she did 9 years. That was a used 147 in the first place. And it was still quite nice when she sold it. It was just starting to feel a bit tired, but we'll come to that in a minute. Meanwhile, I had acquired the Rover 3500, the P6 V8, because I was still working on the Rover 2000. In the time I'd had it, I'd painted it once myself. When I first got it, took all the rattle can panels off, one at a time. I sanded them down, I bought a compressor, painted them in the garage at home, got the car looking good, and then a few years later I did it all again because I only cellulosed it, and so it started sort of fading, bubbling here and there, so I did it a second time. And then around the time we had the Rover 216, it had some rot in the sills, so I started welding it myself and then eventually shipped off to be welded professionally. And that's really the only time I've ever really set fire to a car properly when I've been welding it, was when some underseal caught in the box section of the sills, and I managed to put it out before the fire brigade turned up, but that was an exciting time. But yes, I was still active in the Rover community and on the forums, which were an exciting new thing back then. And this, yeah, there used to be a section, the cars and parts for sale, or there used to be a section, cars and parts for free. And that was an exciting, dangerous place to lurk. And this V8 Rover turned up, and I think I mentioned this the other day in my walk around the garage of all the cars I've got now, that, yeah, this was just local down the road. And so I went around there to have a look at it, and yeah, I basically got the car. Back then, this is going back a long time now, longer than I would care to remember. That joined the stable, and it ran for a little while on its original 3.5 litre engine with its terrible 3-speed automatic gearbox. It's a nice fun car in its own way, but yeah, unreliable, and then it's been off the road for the last couple of years getting its new engine. That one is still there. Whew. What next? Right, now still in the era of the Alpha 156, those 5 years, I acquired a Mach One Toyota Mr2. Actually from the guy who ended up buying the 156, and it was completely by accident. He'd had that Mach One Mr2 for quite a while himself actually, and I've been in it a couple of times and I really liked it. I mean, it had shonky as hell bodywork on it, wave effect rear arches, because Mach One Mr2s, God, they just rust like nothing else. But a great engine. It was not T-top, it was the pop-up sunroof one, so the floor was pretty good, I thought. He'd realised he couldn't get through another MOT in it, and he parked it in a barn down in the West Country. And after a little while, his friend in the West Country got fed up, and I've been sort of jokingly saying, I'll buy that off you one day, I really fancy that. And one day we had a text conversation, so yeah, I'll give you 400 quid for it. Done. Yeah, that's funny. Came home from work, and MR2 on my drive. So I owned an MR2. The guy who owned the barn was so fed up of it, he trailered it from the West Country to Kent during the time while I was at work and before I got home. The day I got it, I put a new set of tyres on it, and then that weekend, and this photo is me and my friend Barry, who I do road trips with. I think it'll probably come up in a couple of stories in the next week or so, because I've got a couple of road trip tales to talk through, because I can't go and do any test drives on new cars. This is me and him at Liddon Hill racetrack, new tyres, MOT, raced it. The following week I changed the oil and then discovered exactly how rusty it was. It was very, very, very rusty indeed. I mean, horrifically. For a car magazine feature about welding a monocoque chassis, we got a classic car garage involved, and they were going to just tack on a new sill and a new arch to make it a nice, quick, easy job. They could knock that out in a day or so, hopefully. We budgeted that amount of time for it and that amount of money from my pocket. But yeah, they sent me to work to sort of keep the costs down and make it fast and efficient. They got me to get the grinder out and start wire brushing the filler off the arch. I started sanding, and I couldn't find any metal. I was just going and going and going, and the filler kept on going and going and going. And after a while, they come over and said, "What are you doing?" And they said, "Well, I can't find any car. I can only find filler." So they got hammer and chisel and started hammering, chiseling, and they found filler that thick, where it looked like the car had been relatively new. It was a 1987 car, and the condition, the quality of the paint suggested this happened when the car was probably only a year or two old. It had been T-boned hard in the side in the driver's door, and someone, rather than repairing the B-post, just filled it with tons of goop, and then sanded it and painted it, and then bent the driver's door to match the shape of the thing. So that suddenly turned from a couple of £100 quick repair job into a massive job. And because water had been coming in through its dodgy repair, there was rust starting under the driver's feet, going all the way down the inner and outer sill, which both had to be replaced, into the rear arch, and ending behind the rear light cluster on that side. That was a monster of a welding job. I was glad a professional was tackling it, not me. Anyway, I took it home, and I was going to do the passenger side myself. Moving on a couple of years, I'm sort of fast forwarding quite a lot here, starting to tackle the passenger side rust, which wasn't as bad, but it's still pretty horrific. And then the fuel pump went, and to get the fuel pump out, you have to drop the petrol tank out, and the petrol tank is as high as the body, and so you have to lift the car its own height off the ground to get to the... Oh no, and I just wasn't up for it, so I sold it. And the car's now running again. Someone has actually repaired it, restored it. I'm very glad to know, and I'm hoping at some point that I can go up and meet him and take the car for a quick drive again, just to sort of see how good it is now. Because I'd done lowered suspension on it, so it handled quite well. The engine was fantastic on that car. That was a real strong point on it. It really, really revved well. I kind of wish I still had that, but that was a problem car in terms of corrosion. But that car went, and it was replaced. Well, it didn't go, it just sat in the corner of the drive. But while I had it, I found an E30. I really wanted an E30 BMW, and I would love another one again at some point. What I really wanted was a manual estate, a station wagon or a touring in 325 form, but I couldn't find any. And my E30 searches one day turned up for £250, a 320 auto saloon. Okay, it's not the model I want, but for £250, I'm not going to say no, am I? I went down and had a look at it. It turned out that a garage had taken it apart exchange, and they just used it as like a loan car until the MOT ran out and they wanted a shot of it. So £250 for an E30. And the only spot of rust on it was on the front spoiler. What do you call it? The little chin spoiler thing. So that was incredible. Even the driver's seat was immaculate, and the E30 driver's seats, they just shred. You just got to look at them and the fabric falls apart. And so yeah, I really had a good time with that car. I changed the cam belt, I did a bunch of servicing on it, improved it to make it really sort of nice, good runner. Although it did have one random problem which just drove me absolutely insane. For the first good 6 months of that time, it would just cut out randomly. Sometimes when you're driving, sometimes when it was just idling, and it would start up as randomly as it had cut out. And there was no rhyme or reason to it. I couldn't figure it out at all. Eventually, I took it to a sort of auto electrician diagnostic place, and he had it hooked into a computer thing that was testing every single connection and earth point and positive point in the car, but it was reporting that there was nothing wrong with any of the systems. And he was about to start manually cutting into the wiring limb of the car with a scalpel to try and find a break in the thing. And as he did it for his first cut, he moved the fuel injection loom, and there was a loose screw to where that loom joined another bit of loom, and that's all it was. He tightened that screw and the car never had a problem again. So yeah, suddenly I had a reliable E30 320, but I still wanted a 325 wagon, so I stuck it on eBay. I was aware that prices had risen a fair bit, so I stuck it on eBay, made a bit of a profit on it, went back on eBay to try and buy a wagon, and suddenly discovered that manual wagons are tripled in price compared to the slight increase on automatic saloons. So suddenly my pocket full of cash was nowhere near enough to go and get me the car I wanted. So that was my last experience of an E30 being on my drive. So what did I replace that with? A classic Range Rover, the obvious step from an E30 BMW to a 19, I think it was a 91 or 92 Range Rover Classic Vogue. It had the 3.9 litre V8, 5-speed auto I think it would be at that point, electric everything, air conditioning, gangster black tint, but it drove well. It was a nice car. And the first time virtually I drove it, after I got it home and washed it, was into London. I had to drop someone off in Canary Wharf, which, if you're familiar with London, is quite high security. So the first time I drove it anywhere, having just washed the outside, not even bothered to vacuum the interior, drop the window, the guy comes over, mirror underneath the car to make sure there's no explosives under the car, and they take a swab of your steering wheel to make sure there's no explosives on the steering wheel. And I suddenly thought, oh God, what's this car been used for? Have they used it for clay pigeon shooting and got, explosives from that? Has someone been involved in robberies or drugs? I've no idea. The gangster tints don't look good. Luckily, nothing came of it bad, which is a massive relief. And I was able to drive through Canary Wharf, drop my passenger off, carry on to work, and I never drove it through there again, just on the off chance that there's anything flagged up on the number plates again. Now that was a fun car. It didn't really have too many problems, apart from the fact it would throw off its alternator and power steering belts all the time. And I took it to a couple of Land Rover specialists and they couldn't figure out why, but it just did it every couple of journeys. It would flick it off and suddenly you're driving with either no power steering, which is very hard on a Range Rover, or no power being produced at the alternator, so to limp it home and get it fixed before you ran out of juice and just conked out. I didn't keep that long. I think the deciding thing to get rid of that car was when I noticed bubbles in the header tank, so I thought maybe the head gaskets might be on the way out. It's time to bung them back on eBay. That was a short-lived but fun adventure with a Range Rover. I'd like another one, but they've got silly money now. I kind of wish I kept it and just fixed all the problems, because a classic Range Rover is now getting crazy money again. This is when I paid like 800 quid for that car. That was like proper banger money. Then we were joined by one that's still on the fleet today, the Tomcat. This was a complete chance purchase. I paid about 100 quid for that car. I've been turning up at a shop, getting some glass tiles cut a few at a time. And one day I turned up in my P6 and they said, oh, you like old cars? Come around the corner, we've got a car for you. This car had been abandoned by one of their staff in their yard around the back of the shop, and they wanted it gone. So gave them 100 quid for it. Admittedly, I did think it was a P5B coupe when I negotiated, thinking I've just bought a P5B for £100. It's an easy mistake to make when someone says, do you want a Rover coupe? And you haven't really thought about Rover Tomcats in 20 years. But it turns out I wasn't disappointed. I was going to flip it, but it turned out I really liked it. So I've still got it all these years later, as you know. Now, where are we on the list now? We're that far through. We've barely moved. Crikey. Okay, so then the 159 turned up. I really wanted a 159. I really wanted an estate. I really wanted a black one. I wanted a 4-wheel drive diesel with a 2.4 because they were good. They're also very rare. I believe they sold about 12 of them in the UK. One day I actually found one in Stoke-on-Trent. It wasn't really much of a question as to whether I was going to buy it or not. It was how quickly can I buy it. unfortunately, I rung up, did all the deal, did the finance to part exchange my 156, which is now fully paid off but worth buttons, to go buy this new car, which is slightly more than I wanted to spend, but it was kind of my dream car. I've been looking for one for about 9 months at that point because I really wanted this really specific model. And I rung up and they did all the finance and everything, and they said, no, sorry, your credit rating isn't good enough. And I was kind of confused because I thought I had a fairly decent credit rating. And I went on to Equifax or Experian or one of those kind of credit checking things. Turned out someone had taken out a bunch of phone contracts in my name and never paid them and defaulted on the lot. And so that was meaning I couldn't get finance. So I took a couple of weeks getting that sorted out, rung the dealer back and said, have you still got the car? In the meantime, they'd sold the car to someone else. Like this new local customer had demanded 4 new Pirellis, so that's £1,200. They demanded all stone chips be professionally taken out. So the car was immaculate on a brand new set of tyres, and they put down a deposit and then changed their minds. So the car was now better than when I'd first seen it. In fact, I'd never seen it in person at that point, and bought the car. And so it kind of worked out quite well in the end. But I had the car for a delivery driver, dropped it off from Stoke-on-Trent, so I never had to go up north to do it. And then the next day, I don't know why they didn't take the 156 with them. They sent a different driver to go and collect the 156. But this guy climbed in the car. This guy slammed into the driver's seat, slammed the steering wheel into the dashboard. And I was thinking, my poor car, I've just coveted and cosseted this car for the last 5 years, and you've just got into it and clearly the car doesn't like you and you don't like it. What's your problem? And the car wouldn't start. The car clearly took a dislike to him. And we spent the next hour or so on the drive ringing a friend who works at an Alfa Romeo main dealer, another mechanic friend, and a friend in the AA, just trying to find some reason for this thing to not go, because it had driven into the driveway minutes before. And the guy said, well, if you can't take it away, then we're not going to be able to do the part exchange with you. And this is kind of awkward. And so I've got 2 relatively new Alphas on the drive, and I'm thinking, how am I going to pay for this? And with retrospect, I wish I had been able to keep the 156 because I'd love to have that car now. But it seemed like the 156 didn't want to go, it wanted to stay. It was telling me to keep it, and I wish I'd listened. But in the end, I got back into the car, I moved the seat, I moved the steering wheel, suddenly the car started. Where he'd slammed the steering wheel into the dash, he just pinched an ignition wire, I think, and that was the last I saw of it, very sadly. Anyway, the 159, that was good. That was a really, really rapid car. It wasn't as economical as the 156 because it was much heavier, and I was always disappointed with that aspect of it, and also the fact that it got a early Quattro style 4-wheel drive system, so that sapped a bit of efficiency from the car. But it was a brilliant handling thing, and it was rapid and it beautiful. It had a certain sinister, devilish look about it, which the 156 looked a bit too cute compared to it. Just a beautiful car, especially on the big TI 19-inch rims, looked really good. And the year we got it, we stuck us out winter tyres on it, and we drove down. We were going to do the Stelvio Pass in it, but it snowed early. But we drove through the snowy mountains in the thing in the 4-wheel drive, got down to Lake Garda. Yeah, it looked really good. It perfect in that setting, the 159 on the Italian roads, perfect. Unfortunately, I didn't get to keep it long. I was planning on running it for a year as my everyday car, and then kind of parking it as a future collector's car and just getting something cheap and nasty to go to work in. Unfortunately, one day on the way to work, it was down a very narrow country lane. I was following a little Toyota Prius about 30 miles an hour, and a car came bombing down the other way, clipped the front wheel, took the front wheel off it, and that was it. The car was done. Which is a real shame, because I had been looking for it longer than I think I owned it for, which is very, very sad indeed. I was not particularly happy about that. I'm still not now. Still quite sad, really. After that happened, because I built that car up as my favourite car in so long that I really wanted it. I didn't want another 159 that wasn't as good, because I would never have found another 4-wheel drive 2.4 estate. Over the years of 159 production, they increased the spec of them, and then one year they just cut it back, so suddenly everything became options again. So if you got I think it was a 2010 car, or 2009 or 2010 car, you got all the options just after they'd improved the engine output to 210 horsepower. So that one sort of brief period, you got the big engine and all the toys, and those are the best ones to go for. And this is one of them, and it was the 4-wheel drive. And I thought, I don't want a front-wheel drive 1.9, even a 2.4 is going to be a bit of a letdown, because I'm not going to get this perfect with all the power. I just couldn't face being let down by my dream car, so I didn't get another 159. Because I was working for BMW magazine, I bought my worst car ever, the 520D. They said I could run it as a staff diary car, and yeah, I did. And if you check my worst car ever video, you'll see all about that car. What a mistake at a maker, as they used to say on Hello Hello. And I thought it was all sorted when my dad bought it off me, because he needed an estate car, and I thought, brand new engine, everything's fixed. We've finally fixed everything possible on that one, and of course it wasn't. He got rid of it quickly as well. The reason I got rid of it was because I'd taken on a new contract with a new job, and it meant that I could use their cars, and I was getting a different car every few months, really. And so over the course of, I think, 4 years, I had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 different Seat Leons, all estates, all ESTs, and had a variety from the FR and the Ecomotive. The Ecomotive is painfully slow to drive. To Cupra 280, Cupra 290, Cupra 300, a Cupra 300 all-wheel drive, which should have been the best of them all, but you only get the DSG with the 300 all-wheel drive, and that's such a letdown. It's very smooth and very quick and everything, and very clinical, but it's not actually fun. The Cupra 300 in manual is front-wheel drive only. It's a lot more enjoyable to drive. We drove that 300 all-wheel drive down to the Stelvio Pass because I've always wanted to do the Stelvio, so I took that car down there, but it's automatic, so every time we get to one of the many hairpins, it's not in the right gear. We stick it in the manual override thing with the flappy paddles, but they're attached to the wheels, so as you go around a corner, you can't find the damn thing. So that car kind of spoiled the Stelvio for me. I want to go back with a proper manual gearbox car. It'd be far more enjoyable. That should have been so good, but it wasn't. The experience was good. The four-wheel drive off-roader sort of slightly stacked up Leon estate, which they stopped making in favour of the SUVs, which I thought the experience was actually better than the Ateca because it's built on the Leon ST platform, which gives it a bigger boot space. You get more luggage into a Leon experience than you do into an Ateca. So that's my buying advice. Don't buy an Ateca, buy a used experience, which you can't get anymore. And a couple more FRs. They were very good cars. I really do rate the Leon. It's basically the Spanish version of the Golf, if you want to be really crude about it and say it. Well, not thank me for saying that. They're very good. You get the same technologies you get in all the Audis and the Volkswagens and everything else, but for a probably better price, really. Now, I'm going to step back again a short period in time here because the chronology is a bit tight and a bit complicated and a bit messed up. Around the time I changed from the 159 to the 520, my wife still had her Alpha 147. Now, meanwhile, I had bought an MG ZS, which I thought I would flip, and I think I paid another £250 from a car dealer who'd taken it as part exchange and wanted it gone. It was a nice car, actually. All I was going to do was polish it, service it, sell it on, try and make a bit of a profit, but then suddenly I found I needed a car in a hurry. When 159 met its unfortunate end, I had this MG, so I started just driving that day to day. And at the same time, the 147 had been just playing up a bit more and more, so my wife wanted it to be gone. We looked at part exchanging it, but the best we could get was £300, so we thought we'd just hold on to it. So I was using a mixture of the 147 and the MG ZS, because she then bought an R55 Mini Clubman, one of the new shapes. It was a fairly basic car, but it was a really good little thing. It was, in some ways, she was very disappointed with it because it was so much slower and so much more basic than the Alpha. Even though it was like 15 years newer, it felt like she was stepping backwards in so many ways. Even though we've been pretty tight on, I've always been hot on the T-Sparks and the oil, it did the burning out a cylinder thing, and so we sold it to a friend who was an Alpha mechanic and he changed the engines on it. So that was the end of the 147 for us, but I can't believe it's still going strong with an engine out of a 166. But that must have been why she'd been unhappy, because she didn't think the engine sounded right for a little while at that point. So I guess maybe it was suffering oil starvation in another way, because it still had a good level of oil in it even after it had burnt out the cylinder. So anyway, yeah, I kept the MG ZS going for a little while. I stuck a decent radio in it. I improved lots of things on it, like paint defects and all kinds of other stuff. I made it much nicer than I ever planned to. Spent quite a lot of money improving it significantly and used it for a while. In fact, I really wish I'd just held on to that car and kept it rather than buying the BMW, which was an absolute problem child. While we still had the 147 and we had the 159 on the drive, that brief period, the 147 needed a new clutch slave cylinder. Normally we'd have gone straight around to a friend who runs an Italian car garage called Go Italia. He's really good. I definitely recommend him, but he was on holiday that week, the week the slave cylinder went, so he took it to another local garage who isn't around anymore, and they couldn't do it. They faffed around, and I don't know what the problem was, but they didn't know how to do it for some reason, and instead of being a couple of days, it dragged on and on. So I wound up buying a Saxo, which I do believe I've got a photo coming up now. If not, I look stupid. It was a beautiful little metallic green thing, with dent in every single panel, but impeccably maintained mechanically. And although it was always a race for the keys to take the 159, the Saxo wasn't exactly a bad second choice, because that was a nice little car and didn't pay much for it. I literally went onto Auto Trader, like Thursday it used to come out, and I'd typed in cheapest car within 100 miles and that was it. I paid like 150 quid for it, and it was fantastic. And I sold it on to a friend who I think thought they might flip it, so I got my money back on it. I didn't see that one again, but that was quite a fun little car to own briefly for a couple of weeks. So there's two brief ones which I've forgotten about and actually boost the total a couple more. The MG ZS you can see on one of the very early videos on this channel when I was just playing with YouTube as a hobby rather than anything like I'm doing today. While I had the Seats coming and going, I discovered something which has profoundly affected my life. I discovered the 2001 Wire Edge Minis while doing a photo shoot for Modern Mini magazine, which is now Performance Mini magazine. And I discovered that at the time, I think they were 15 years old, or about to be 15 years old. And me and the editor of the magazine both spent a day with a couple of these cars at the factory, and we both went, I want one of those. And within a month, we both bought one, which is how I came to own Y951NJX, my 2001 May the 1st built Mini. So that's going to have its birthday on Friday. It'll be 19 years old on Friday. It doesn't look it, it's incredible. That's a beautiful bit of timeless design there. The shock of the new has worn off, and now it just looks like a good classic bit of design. Can't believe it's that old now. But yeah, that is how I came to own that's how I came to have the Wire Edge Mini, and I'll do some more videos about that in the near future, so I won't blather on too much about that car. So that's now sitting there. It's a permanent addition to the fleet. But then when my work with the company that's given me the Seats ended, I needed to find a car in a hurry, and this is around the same time that I started this channel. And I thought it might be quite fun to do Bangonomics, but I didn't want to go full on 300 quid absolute beater of a car. I wanted something with a bit of luxury and a bit of life in it, which is why I bought the Mondeo for £1,000. Unfortunately, that was a terrible mistake, because like the 5 Series, it was dreadful. It was not a car to keep, and it didn't stay with me long. It was written off 2 weeks after I bought it. First thing I did to it was fit 4 brand new tyres and take it around to a friend's garage to find out why it was not accelerating properly, because I thought it'd be something really simple. It wasn't the simple turbo pipes I thought. It turned out it needed injectors, so he fitted 4 new injectors, and I'd had 4 new tyres put on it, so I was already double the cost of the car into the thing. And on the way home from the garage, it got T-boned by a car coming through a red light. And that was the end. Well, it wasn't the end of that car, because I bought it back from the insurance, fixed new doors onto it, and yeah, that was exactly the beginning of this channel. So this is, if it happened now, I think I would have done much better videos about that entire process. But it was like 2 years ago, and I was just very much learning YouTube. Not a missed opportunity, but you know, I could have done far better with it had I known more about how to do YouTube back then. But yeah, that car, I tried so hard with it. I remapped it, I changed the turbo on it, I did everything I could think of to try and get the performance. Up to 60 miles an hour, it was fantastic. The moment you hit 60, it was like someone had just thrown an anchor out the back window and the car just stopped at 60. You couldn't get any more out of it. It was just hard work to try and push on a long drive. So that didn't stay long. We used it on a camping trip, and it was a great car to chuck a huge tent and dogs and everything else in. So yeah, it was practical, but it was irritating. And not long after that trip, I saw the W204 Mercedes for sale, which is now on the drive, and that replaced it, and that was not a mistake. This is one of those cars, the W204 is one of those cars that I can't fault. If it was an Alfa Romeo, I'd say it was the best car I'd ever owned. It's only because it's a Mercedes I'm not going to say that. But that's unfair. It's fantastic, it's got good economy, it's good to drive, it's reliable, it's good looking, it's hard wearing, it's 10 years old and over 100,000 miles, and it still looks fresh. That W204 is a brilliant car, and that's going to stay on the drive as a daily driver, I think, for a long time to come. But the reason I bought the W204 was because I'd found the W123 about a year previously, before I got the Mondeo. So yeah, it must have been around. Well, see, that's recent stuff. I'm losing track. There's too many cars. The W123 I found in a barn, as I said on my current fleet video last week, and that will hopefully be running soon, so that's going to get some stories attached to it eventually. The other one is the Alfa 145, which I don't want to forget about either, which just before the Mercedes, I've been looking for a 145 forever. Ever since my 146 got totaled back in 2002, I've wanted another one, and they just hardly ever come up for sale. There's under like 100 or so of each in the countries, so when that 145 came up for sale, I had to buy it, so that's why I've got that car. And now we're very much into the final cars. Backtracking on my wife's cars just very briefly, she's not had anywhere near as many as me. I think she's had maybe 5 or 6 cars in her entire driving career. She traded the Mini R55 Clubman for a 5-door Mini when the 3-year PCP ran out on that. And she was going to keep the 5-door, but she got a second dog, and that meant the boot was too small for 2 dogs, because our plan had been with the 5-door not to PCP exchange it after 3 years, but just pay off the finance and own the car long term. Unfortunately, the second dog meant the boot wasn't big enough, so she's now exchanged that for the blue F57 Clubman, which she now plans to keep and pay off the PCP rather than exchanging after 3 years, because you know, she's very aware that she's in a trap with finance, but just wanted a new car when the old 147 was worth 300 quid. So yeah, over the last couple of months we've not had that many new cars. The Hyundai Coupe that came and went last year for the the cheap car challenge at Santa Pod. I'm still in contact with the owner of that car. He is actually the owner of the 5 Series F11 and the Maestro, who've been featured on this channel. So he's a friend of mine and the channel. That car is currently with a friend of his who needed a car, so he loaned it out to save him having to park it anywhere on the street. It saves his storage issues. But yeah, we're going to do some more sort of maintenance and jobs on that car at some point, probably before the next MOT is due, I would imagine. But yeah, that car is still lurking around, and hopefully have it back on the channel at some point. Most absolute recent purchase is the Volvo 740, which is now gracing my drive and being improved bit by bit every single day that I finally get parts turn up in the post. In fact, a couple of things from GSF turned up last night, but it was such a minor thing it's not worth doing a video about. I have to wait for some more things to turn up. I think that's everything. Not including hire cars, obviously, or press cars, because I've had literally hundreds of press cars from car manufacturers over the years for working on magazines and newspapers doing reviews. That would take all day to do that, really. On the Sinclair C5, which came from another photo shoot, and one day I'll get around to putting a motor into. I'm not quite sure how many of these will get photos with them, as many as I possibly can, but as I said at the beginning, some of them, even though I've been through my attic, I've been through boxes and boxes of prints and slides and negatives and old black and white folders of, when I used to shoot a lot of black and white film, you get your film, you cut it and stick it in sheets and stick it in a binder, so holding them up to the light one after another, flicking through endless things. I've had old computers out the loft going through their hard drives trying to find photos. So I've even, hang fire, resurrected my old negative scanner so I could scan negatives. I had to go and get some new software for this that worked, because Minolta don't exist anymore. But I managed to find a bit of third-party software that would drive that so I could scan a bunch of the old 35mm negatives. Wow, this has been an adventure. Hopefully this has been in some way entertaining, and it's certainly taken my mind off things for a lot of hours doing the research. That's quite a trip down memory lane for me as well, sort of seeing all the old photos. Would this car history be anything like you expected from me? Were you expecting far more exotic cars, some American things, which bizarrely I've never owned an American car. I don't understand why. I've only owned one Japanese car, the MR2. And the most powerful car I've owned, I mean on paper, is the Cupra 300 all-wheel drive, but the Alfa 159 with a remap, I think that was making just under 300 horsepower, but way more torque than the Cupra, so I think it was actually slightly quicker. The least powerful, I would probably say, is the old Polo. Pretty car, the Fiat Barchetta. The most hated car. Toss up between the Mach 3 Escort at the beginning or the old 520D, because I didn't like that one at all. Now, which ones are we staying forever on this fleet? That's another interesting question. I haven't really decided that yet. The Rover 2000, that's definitely not going anywhere. That's a keeper. The Mini Y-Ridge, that is kind of an investment, but I do really like that one, so that's definitely a long-term keeper, whether it's a forever car or just a long-termer, that's definitely staying. The V8 Rover and the W123, I think I'll need to drive them first to see if I'm really happy, see how much I enjoy having them. As Tomcat, I've had that for a long time now. I do enjoy driving that one a lot, and I've put a lot of effort into making that car into a good car, so that will probably hang around for certainly a good long while yet. The Alfa 145, I ought to keep. I've been after one for so long, and now I've got one, but it keeps not loving me back, if that makes sense. So I don't know, maybe I'll keep it another couple of years and then make room for something else. The Volvo, everyone seems to adore the Volvo, but once I've made that perfect and driven it for a year or so, I don't know, will I be bored of it? Certainly I'd love to have a Saab 900 Turbo on the fleet at some point. And I definitely want one of these. I need a Crown Vic. So yeah, something's going to have to give there. Right, thank you for watching. I'm hoping that in the next couple of days I'm going to get a whole bunch of parcels turn up, and I've got an email after email after email saying that everything's going to turn up tomorrow and I'm going to have too much to do, and then I can give you some videos on the Alfa. I can finish doing jobs on that. I can get some stuff done on the Volvo. There's 2 or 3 different videos on the Volvo waiting to happen, a bunch of stuff for the V8 waiting to arrive, just stuff waiting to do, but I can't move until the postman. And I really do appreciate all the couriers and the postmen and women who are doing a great job, but they're just overwhelmed with stuff because no one can go to the shops right now. So everything not being, in fact, the only thing is next day just absolutely blew me away was this microphone, which I'm just making lots of disturbance with now. Yesterday I spoke to Rode because the old one had broken, and it's got a 10-year warranty on this thing. The post came this morning, new Rode microphone, sorted under warranty. Right, well, thanks for watching. If you've enjoyed this, please hit like. If you're not already subscribed and you've got this far into this, please hit subscribe as well. If you like these Rover t-shirts, they're on Redbubble. There's a link down below and up on the little thingies up above. I've got these in 4 different colours of car, and multiple colours of t-shirt and of sweatshirt, clocks, notebooks, phone cases, stickers, side views of the car, and I've done a side view of the Volvo, which I'm really happy with. Right, I'll see you again soon. Don't forget, Friday evening, 8 o'clock UK time, we'll be doing the live chat this week. So take care, hopefully I'll speak to you then.